All right, so today we're going to talk about this thing called session. Does anybody have any concept of what that might entail or what that means?
I believe in Chrome it has something called section too, and I think section just telling you like what data did you just go through on the web page. That's all I understand about section.
Okay. Yeah, so what we're going to talk about today is quite similar to that, and it's this idea that if we're browsing on a website, we may want some information to persist for each request. Okay, so far our requests have been working in what way? Do we have any information that's sort of following us from request to request yet? Okay. Yes. What was it? What information was following us from request to request? Nothing, right? Yeah, I mean, we haven't had anything. So essentially, like in our application that we built, we did have a list of users. So you might say, oh, but that's, it keeps coming up every time we hit that page. Right, but we're not able to, we haven't been changing that, right? I mean, it's really just something that we hard-coded in there. So what if I were to go onto an application like LinkedIn, for instance? Okay, so here, and now I'm logged in, and we've got like my name and my profile picture, right? How does the application keep track of those things? So as I go to different pages in the application, how does it know who I am?
Cookies.
Yeah, so it does use cookies for sure. So depending on how they built the application, it may or may not use session. Okay, so when we use session, which we're going to be talking about today, we will be using cookies as well. And what the cookie does is it's going to identify this particular user. So when I hit a different page in my application, that cookie that's kind of following me every time, it's going to identify me to Flask. So then Flask can connect me to that individual session, and we can make changes to some data that we've saved in there. So what kinds of things might we want to save in session? Like if we were writing an application like LinkedIn or something like that, what might we want to save in a session? So as a user, yeah, maybe something like that, right? Password? I think I heard that somewhere. Who's saying password? Yeah, you think? Why? What if somebody hacked in and was able to get the session data? Now they have the password, right? Okay. So you generally don't want to save something that is sensitive data. So I mean, if it's the name, that's okay. Another thing we could also potentially save in our session might be the user ID. So that way, if we go to a different page and we need to retrieve some information about our user, how could we do that? Well, we can use the user ID that was saved in session, right? Okay, cool. So that's just basically what we're going to be using them for, is just to save some data so that the next request will know something about the previous request, okay? So before we use session, every single request is completely distinct. It doesn't know anything about what came in front of it, and it also doesn't know what might come next. With session, we can create some persistence. All right? So let's see how we're going to do that. So I'll open up our little Hello Flask app in here. Oops, we got our announcements. Okay, so in our server.py, in order for us to actually use session, we're going to have to do what? Where are we going to get it from, you guys think? You think we're going to have to write it from scratch?
Download or
We're going to import it, right? Good. So let's do that. Let's import session. Oops. Okay. And then I'm going to purposely leave off at another step too. We'll get an error, and then we'll kind of see why is this error happening so that we can deal with it. Yes? Oh, yeah. Thank you for the reminder. Sorry about that.
So session is from Flask.
Right. We're going to import it from Flask. Okay. Now what we're going to do, so we've got this form right now where we've been taking in some user information. Rather than just kind of printing it out on our back end as we've been doing, what we're going to do is we're going to save this to a last added user part of the session. Okay. Now what the session is it's a dictionary, which means that we can add different key value pairs to it. So what I'm going to do is, as we receive this sent form, I'm just going to add, or I'm going to change the key. The key will be last added user, and we'll set it to whatever just came through the form. Okay? Any questions about that before we do it? No. Okay, so here inside of our process function, let's do this. Let's say session, and then last added user equals. So it's going to be everything that comes in through request.form, right? So let's just create a dictionary right here. And before I even do that, I'm just going to save form to a variable. And the reason why I'm going to do this, I'll explain in a second. Form. Okay. The reason why I'm going to do this is because every time I access some piece of the form, I don't want to say request.form and then the name of the key. Instead, I just want to say form and then the name of the key. So this isn't crucial. You guys don't have to do it this way, but I'm just going to show you because I find that it's a little bit less typing. So we'll create this dictionary here. And then inside the dictionary, I'm going to have basically all those same keys, right? So we'll say form at first name, last name, okay. And then I think we had hair color, right? Dark mustard. Anyone? All right. Okay, cool. So we got that going on. This is what's going to happen when we process the form. Again, we're just going to set this information to this key, so the last added user key in our session. And then again, we're just going to redirect back to the index route, right? Okay. Now there's one other thing that I'm going to do here on the index route, which is just if we first hit this application and like nothing has happened, right? This is the first time user. I'm just going to set the last added user to be none. Okay? So do you guys know how I can do that? Does anyone have any guesses how we could do this? Yeah, we'll do a conditional, right? And what are we going to ask? Yes. So let's ask if that thing's not in session, right? And then if it's not, let's just put in something. We'll just put in none, I guess. So if last added user not in session, then what we want to do is we want to say session at last added user equals none. Okay? So that way if I try to access this thing inside my template, I shouldn't have any kind of a problem, right? Should be good. Cool? And then inside of our template, let's actually output this, right? So what we want to do is, if there is a last added user, let's just put it out on the screen. So let's go underneath our form down here. Okay. How do I do an if condition in Jinja templating? Sent. Okay. Yeah, and then we'll close it after that. So I'm going to say if it does not equal, oops, I don't know why I did it. You like that? Okay, so if it doesn't equal none, let's put some information here, right? Okay. And then we'll just do some p tags here. So actually, maybe we should put like an H2, last added user, first name, okay, and then how do I output the actual first name?
Double curlies.
Yes,
Double nested.
very good. So we'll go last added user, and then we'll do at first name, right? Like that. Okay, and then let's just duplicate that out. So here we'll do, oh, darn it. And then this will be hair color. This is kind of tedious. Sorry about that. Last name, and then finally we got hair color down here. Okay. Now there are two ways that we can get the session information to the template. I can actually access it directly in the template, so I can say session and then whatever the key that I'm looking for, or I can just pass it in explicitly as a variable. Now I'm going to choose to pass it in as a variable, and again, this is just so that I can keep things nice and short and sweet. If I were to reference it using session inside here, I have to say session at the last added user key, versus if I just pass it in directly, now I can just call it last added user, right? So how do I pass it in directly, guys? Hearing a lot of different things. Requests, doubles. Okay, how do I pass it to the template? Let's add another argument here, right? So we'll say last added user equals session at the last added user key. Right? Okay, cool. Now let's actually run this guy. So we'll say Python server.py. Oops. Okay, let's go back to localhost. I think we're on 7,000. Okay. Okay, cool. Now let's try to add our last added user. What's this number that was appearing in the template? Did anybody see that? The number 1? Oh, I was flooring 1.5. So this is something we were playing with the other day. You could actually pass a function into a template to run something. Okay. All right, cool. So let's just submit a user. Oops. That's pretty nice, right? So I've got this last added user down here, which I didn't have before, because now we've added one. Now one thing I wanted to check in here. Oh shoot, okay. I wanted to show you guys an error, so let me just refresh this real quick. Okay. So we're getting an error up here. The session is unavailable because no secret key has been set. Okay. So I think I had that set accidentally because I was testing out something else the other day. But basically, what would happen is you'll see this error if you have not set the secret key for your app yet. So let's see where we add that in. So here, what if I came up here and said app.secretKey? It's going to happen now. Get rid of this. Yeah, why?
Because it's above where you declare the app there.
Yeah, exactly. So we declared the app on line 5, but I'm trying to affect some property of it, right? That's not going to work. Okay, so I just need to move this underneath where we've actually declared app.
How do you do that? That like.
Oh, in one shot? So you just hold down the Alt key and then use your arrows. Yeah, super nice. And it's really cool because you don't have to select the entire line. You just need to be in that line to do it. Okay, so now if we go back, okay, so now we're good. Now I can add some other users. Brian, you want to be
Sure.
the next one? Okay. And your last name is like that, right? You've got We'll save. Rosemary red.
Diet black every morning.
All right. So that's working exactly as we expected. The other thing that we can do is we can create like a reset route if we want to flush out the session. So let's just do that.
So the secret key isn't really being entered anywhere, but if you're not in the main file, you won't have that secret key.
What do you mean if you're not in the main file? So like if this was being imported somewhere or run?
Yeah, like someone else has this route information. We don't have the secret key.
Well, it depends. I mean, if we're hard coding it in here like we are, then they would have it. They would see it, right?
Yeah.
Probably a better way of doing it would be using environment variables or something like that. But I mean, for simplicity's sake, we're basically just telling you go ahead and hard code it. Okay. Now that's not like best security practice, though. So, okay. All right, cool. So I'm just going to create a little reset route, which will allow us to flush our session if we're done with it. So we'll just say app route, and then we'll say reset. We'll just call it a reset method. And then what I want to do is I just want to take my session and invoke this method called clear. Okay, and then I can return a redirect back to my index route. Okay, cool. So let's see if we still have, we've still got our session right now. So let's just go to the reset route. And there you see, we reset the session and then we redirect it back to the index route. Okay, and then of course I can keep adding if I want. Okay, and then I can reset. We could also, if we want to, probably be better to have a link to this, right? So let's just drop that up here. So I'll create a little link that goes to reset the session, exclamation point. Pretty nice, right? Okay, that's pretty much it for session. Do you guys have any questions about how we did that? Yes, Anthony.
What's the purpose of the secret key?
So Flask uses the secret key to actually craft the cookie. That's my understanding of it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's cookie means?
What?
What's cookies means?
So a cookie is something that can be sent back to the server on each request. It's something that we've given, like if we want to identify a particular user. So you're using my app, you're Alejandro, I want to know every time you hit my app that it's you and not somebody else, right? The server will then give you this thing called a cookie that your browser will hold on to that has some identifying information so that when you make another request to my app, I know, okay, it's Alejandro. Okay? That's all a cookie is. It's just something that can be used to identify like that. It can also have some other information if we want as well. It just doesn't hold, there's a limit to how much you can put in a cookie, so it's not generally used to hold large amounts of information. Okay.
Are you using a Face ID? Is that storing cookies for your passwords and everything?
Like on a
Safari?
like on an iPhone or something like that. Is that what you're saying? No, I wouldn't think so. Because first of all, that's not even running in the browser, right? Like when you unlock it in Face ID, you're not in the browser.
Unlocking your phone doesn't run in the browser, but there's a lot of internet, like you can log into emails or HBO or whatever's on the internet, and it'll just recognize your face and has a stored password.
Well, but see, that's a different thing. If they're then storing those passwords in connection with your face, like, again, that's not happening in the browser, though, right? No. Yeah. Yes, Anthony.
Since you can't store sensitive information in the sessions, how does the page know that you're still logged in when you go to another?
So again, we might store something like a user ID, okay, but we wouldn't store a password. We wouldn't store like a credit card number or something like that, or a social security number, right? Anything that we would be very concerned that, whoa, what if someone got a hold of that? That would be a problem. You don't want to put that in the session.
I guess, how about if you're on an internet thing and it says, remember the password to this site, and you click that, is that a cookie?
Yeah, so what it would probably do is it would then set the cookie to a certain expiration. And the expiration would be, if you say remember me, that expiration would be further out than just on a regular login.
But if it's like the browser, like Google Chrome saying remember this password, that's just the browser saving the password information.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's not affecting the cookie or the session that's happening with that specific application. It's just your browser holding on to some information. So there are other things that you could possibly store in session 2, like we could store, what if we just allowed a user to pick a favorite color or something like that, and then we wanted the background for all the different pages to show up in that favorite color, we could very easily do that with session, right? Okay, so as long as that session was active and they were on our application, we would just show them the color that they liked. So let's look at the code real quick and let's just glance through this. So Brian, tell me what's happening here on line 16.
On line 16?
Mm-hmm.
That's where you imported the you're using the function or that you imported from Flask for the session. Because you imported session at the top, right?
We did import it up there, yeah.
So that's where you're using it.
So that's where we're using it. Okay, but what are we doing now? Get a little bit more technical here about what's going on.
You are setting this session, I don't know call it, but you're setting it to last added user. And
So
you're
what
like
data type is session? I know I mentioned it briefly, but I'm going to make sure you guys get what this is. What data type is a session? Anyone?
Dictionary.
Dictionary. Yeah, here are dictionaries. Okay, cool. So what's going on here?
You're setting the values and keys for or you're setting a dictionary item last added user or a list.
Okay, so this is a key, right?
Yeah.
Last added user. So I'm setting the value for the key last added user to what?
To the first name, last name, hair color.
Okay, and what data type's that?
That is the dictionary.
Yeah, that's those curly braces tell us, right? Okay, so we're setting session at this particular key, which is last added user, to equal another dictionary which has these different key value pairs, right? And it's the information that I just took in from the form.
What is last added user? What is that?
That is a key.
What is it equal to?
Isn't that the name that you
The
use?
value that goes with that key is this whole dictionary right here. So inside of our session dictionary, we now have this key, last added user, that points to a dictionary that has all of this information in it, right? It's got a first name key, which goes to the first name we just took in from the form. Same thing with last name and hair color. Okay.
But on the code, is it somewhat else in the code?
Yeah, kind of. So down here, let's do line 28. Jessica, tell me what's happening here on line 28.
So Linda, are you asking where that name came from?
Yeah.
You just named it. Isn't that just the name that you came up with? Not where it's used after you find it. Like just where.
You're just at, like,
That's just. The
what does
name.
that mean? Yeah, no, and that's just a name that we came up with. We just decided, okay, we're going to call every time we accept form input from that, we're just going to call it that's the last added user. I could have named it something else.
And then the first thing, the last thing, and the third column,
Mhm.
you already have those like in the input things.
Yeah, these wouldn't necessarily have to match these, but for the sake of clarity, I think it makes sense to make them match, right?
Did you make those up? Or did you make the? Did you
So
create those?
these connect directly to our form input. So if you look in here, we've got this form. See the names of each of these inputs? That form input was first underscore name, last underscore name, and haircut.
Okay, so it was
Right.
just that first one that you created. The rest were already assigned to the units.
Yeah, exactly. No problem. Okay, back to line 28, Jessica.
Correct me if I'm wrong, most likely probably am, but it looks like if there's no information in the last added user, then there's nothing.
Okay. So basically what this is saying is that if this key doesn't exist in that specific dictionary, then we're going to do something, right? Okay, cool. Mark, what are we going to do on line 29 if that key wasn't
If the key is not in there, then
Yeah, then what we're going to do is we're going to set the value for that key just equal to none. Okay?
So basically, you're adding a key. Is that what
Yeah, we're adding a key value pair, right?
Okay.
So we're setting the value of this key to be that. Now, if that key already had something, obviously it doesn't because we got inside this loop.
Right.
But if we didn't have a check like that, what we would be doing is we would be overwriting whatever value was connected to last added user every single time. Okay, so that's kind of a common pitfall of session stuff. Is sometimes people decide, okay, I'm just going to set this thing every single time to none. Well, what's the problem with that? Why would that cause us issues?
when you refresh the page, it'll be done?
It'll always be none. Yeah, you'll never get the value that you're expecting. So this way, we're only setting it to none if it wasn't currently in there. All right.
But if what was in
If if this key last added user was not currently in the session dictionary.
so if it wasn't like in the little brackets where you put session, right?
Yeah. So for instance, if we were trying to say session, and then in brackets last added user, there would be nothing in it if this condition was triggered. That probably means, okay, this is the first time the user has actually visited the application, so he doesn't yet have a session. He doesn't have any information stored in the session yet. So then we're just going to store this particular key value pair. Okay.
you don't have to put a request on when you're finding the key values.
Up in here,
There, yeah. Oh,
because
you
of
put
line
that.
14.
Oh, yeah, I can-
Yeah, exactly. And then again, just a quick review on this guy. Let's go Baxter. Tell me what's going on line 52.
Line 52. So what we're saying is we're writing an if statement that is saying if last user is not equal to none, but what we're doing is with the curly brackets and the percentage, that means we're separate. Right?
So the curly and the percent means it's coming from the template. Is that what you said? I mean, this whole file is the template. So yeah, anything that we're doing in there is in the template. But specifically, what does that mean when we're doing curly brace percent sign?
Means that you're creating
So the curly brace percent sign. Actually, hold on. Anyone else want to jump in there? Yes, Michael.
Is that a way to have Ginger pick up the code and then be able to put a condition into the HTML.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but how does this different? How is this different from the double curly brace?
Double curly braces for variables, and the single is for when you put in, like you want to start a for loop or put a
Well, but I
condition.
have variables up in here too.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out how to get that to work.
Okay. So it's not one of those things where we use double curlies for variables and singles and percent for something else, right? Because I've seen variables in both places. What's the difference? I really want to hammer home, like, what are the two kinds of different things that we're doing in these templates?
Whether it's displayed or
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Yes,
Yeah,
Alex.
The doubles are just a display, the other ones are to be sort of.
Yeah, exactly. So if we have a single curly brace followed by the percent sign, that means that we're doing some kind of logic in there. We're controlling the flow of the template a little bit. Whereas the double curly brace means all I'm doing is just outputting something. I want this value to be substituted when the template is rendered. Okay. All right. So as you can see in here, lines 54, 55, and 56, we're just using the double curlies because we're just rendering that information to the template. We just want it to be substituted when this thing is rendered. Okay?
So the double bracket things. So last added user is the key, and then first name is the value. So
Well, let's back up one second. Last added user right now is just a variable that I've passed along to my template. Right? It's no longer a key. Now, if I said session at last added user, which I could have done, then last added user was a key in that case.
so then that's just a variable now.
It's just a variable because here, when I hit the index route, I'm passing along this variable called last added user, and I'm setting it equal to the session at that particular key, right? The value of that.
So you're saying call that dictionary and take that key out of it.
So get the value for last added user from the session dictionary, and then pass that along to the template as this variable last added user. Okay. So is that a little bit more clear, Linda, if you're looking at this here?
That sentence that Baxter was looking at.
Line 52?
Yeah. What is
Okay.
that? What exactly does that mean?
Well, you
So,
tell
like,
me.
If last added user, so last added user is just a variable.
Yeah, didn't I just show you it's being passed along to the template? You saw that, right?
So that's being passed along to the template.
Right here on line 42.
So there's nothing being passed along to the template, right? Is that what that means?
Well, think about the internet.
Well, it means if the value of last added user is none, or is not none, then we want to do this stuff inside, right?
So if you were on the web page and it wanted you to add like your name into it and stuff, what would those values be if they were none?
There would be nothing.
Because there's no last added user.
Yeah, really the purpose for kind of doing this logic here is that what if I didn't have this if condition? That's kind of a good question. What if we just rip these out real quick? What do you guys think is going to happen here?
Every time it's going to be overridden. Everything except the values.
Yeah, just say first name, last name, haircut.
So specifically, I mean, this won't always be a problem, but what if when I first hit the application, I don't yet have a last added user? So my last added user is going to be none because that's the logic that we have.
Error.
Yeah, because now we're trying to say we have this value last added user, which is equal to none, and we're trying to grab a value for the key first name. Do we have that? No, right? So if I refresh this here, now you can see. Well, we're not getting an actual error, but it's basically saying there's nothing in there, right? There is no first name.
Because we still have the conditional.
Yeah, because I just ripped the conditional out. Okay? Everyone pretty good on this? Let's see some thumbs on this. All right? Yeah. Cypress. All right.
right in here we got a lot of clarifications.
At an angle, angles. All right, right in here. This is where I want to see some questions.
I wouldn't say, I get what you're talking about, I'm just not there yet. So I'm still trying to understand the assignments before I really throw this all into my head.
Okay.
That's all. So, I mean, I get what you're talking about. I just don't want to throw a lot of information to my head while I'm still trying to understand the previous assignments.
Take from
Okay.
But I'm with you on it. Like, I see it, but I just don't. I have to read up on it.
And you are in Flask though, right?
I'm in Flask.
You're in Flask. Okay. So the distinction here between a curly brace percent sign and the double curlies, does that make sense to you guys at least?
It does
Yeah. I just didn't know what the percentage was. I was actually looking up what the percentage thing meant.
Yeah.
Like in layman's term, can you just define it for me?
Yeah, I would just say that we're doing our logic in the curly percent stuff. Okay.
Okay.
So if I want to do an if condition, or if I wanted to loop through something, then I would use the curly percent.
I was reading something and someone said that they prefer the dot format method instead of using the percentage. Is that something that you
Format method.
I don't know. It said that it was a bit
I'm not
simpler
sure
where you
I'm
can say the same thing.
familiar with that. Let me see. So Jinja format method. Do you have that on your screen?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm reading something different, but that's all I was
Yeah, let's take a look at that after. Okay. Because I do want to see that. All right. So if there are no further questions, I'm going to dismiss you guys. You can. Yeah, class dismissed.